Light shine on the heaven, the earth's free life free, glory and grace. May it open our eyes to the
本能が目覚める RPG デジタルデビルサーガアバタールチューナー
みんなを助けに来たの。
Here's the thing about Shin Megami Tensei. One, it's generally a darker. All the games are darker than Final Fantasy by default, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. It's not everybody has that. But with this game starts, Digital Devil Saga starts off in a place called the Junkyard, and you are a group. The main character that's being controlled right there, Surf. You are the leader of a tribe called the Embryon. Your mandate from the rulers of the Junkyard, Karma Temple, says, hey, you gotta take over each tribe, and then you can enter the Karma Temple and enter Nirvana, a place of no hunger, of no want, of basically heaven, in this case, is how it is. I know the actual Buddhist Nirvana is a little different depending on how you want to conceptualize it, but it's fine. Darker in atmosphere. Definitely Calvary. Some places, though, could probably use a light. That's how the game starts. At the very first cutscene, you're doing tactical combat, and they're trying to figure out stuff, and an egg falls from the sky. In that egg is a young woman who then unlocks the ability in the entire junkyard for everybody to turn into demons, and you start eating your foes to gain power. The first boss you fight, a guy named Harley, is freaked out because he sees your tribe eat people. And he runs away and is the area right before where Words is. And you have to fight. And I gotta tell you that some of the character development in this is interesting because Argilla, one of your female, and she's defaulted to a healer. You can spec your characters anyway, but she defaults to learning healing mantras. She doesn't want to turn into a monster, while Heath is like, hey, you know what? Cannibalism. Like, literally, no hesitation. Heath is just like, you know, I've always wanted to eat that bastard. Let's do it. Let's get on over here, buddy. And, you know, he does that. And, of course, Surf is the archetypal silent protagonist. You know, he doesn't really say a whole lot. But you're the leader of the Embryon. So, once you go to the Karma Temple after becoming demons, they say, okay, this is the new directive, and you have to go through there. Over the course of the game, you conquer all of the other tribes through alliances, betrayals, people working with you, and you find out, and this is where spoilers can be, so if you don't want spoilers now, this is where I would turn away. You find out that actually, this world is not real. This world is an AI program designed to create designed to create better soldiers. So whoever wins in the junkyard in this will be uploaded into the minds of soldiers in the real world. And everyone who is in the junkyard is a personality clone of someone who died. So that's the thing there. And the young girl, as you play through the game, climbs the Karma Tower, and eventually you end up going to Nirvana. Nirvana is the beginning of the second game. And the thing about this is you slaughter countless. You consume countless numbers of enemies to get to heaven, basically. And you find out that this young girl's mother was a hacker who enabled you to break this AI program, and God, literal, like, super powerful spirit, has a sense of humor and decides to create a portal from the program to the real world that your AI characters can step out into. So you step out into the real world, and God is angry with humans because of climate change. We broke down all the barriers that were protecting the world from all of the bad effects coming from the sun. So now if you're just a human and you step outside of a dome, you turn to stone because God is mad at the world for climate change. So as you play,
this sounds more relevant now than it was when it came out.
It's the thing. So you end up the thing is, you find out at the end of the first game about all of the AI program, one of the villains reveals that you were all killed, and your personalities were inverted, essentially. So Surf is the main character in this game, is generally considered to be a good guy, except that as a scientist, he was an absolute bastard. And Heat, who's aggressive cannibal guy, was actually a really good guy. And so their personality shifted, and they actually make allusions to that at coordinate 136 in the first game, talking about the good prince and the evil prince and the girl, the princess, as it were, Sarah. Eventually, what happens is you merge with Sarah, the young girl, and become Seraph. So Surf, Sarah, Seraph. And
like
you go to the
mile
sun.
away.
You go to the sun, and you fight God. While this is going on, there's also a cat walking around that is named Schrodinger and talks about fate and possibilities and things like that. And that's about the story. That's about the story. I mean, there are individual struggles, like where is that right now? You're getting ready to go see if you can ally with somebody by the name of Janana to see if you can take on the solids and Mick the Slug. For those who don't, there's a recurring antagonist who you happen to fight here a couple of times. He's a bastard. He's like if David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust were an asshole. So it's one of those things. But yeah, Cal says, I don't mean that negatively. It's very much aligned to parts of Shinto religion, makes gods active participants in the world, had a lot of royals who hate. Yeah, it's true. This game, Digital Devil Saga, is great because you have to understand that it's always raining in the junkyard. And that rain is recycled corpses from a place called the Sea of Milk, which is 596 feet below the Karma Temple's surface. Now, you may be like, Nim, that's a very specific number. Yes, it is. I played through it last night by refreshing my brain. So now that we've talked about the story, let's talk about the mechanics. You'll notice at the top right-hand screen of Words' playthrough, you'll see 3 blue icons and a number of red icons. Those are called press turns. Those were developed in the game that came out right before this one, Nocturne. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
Yeah.
Fantastic game, recommended highly. This Digital Devil Saga is an improvement on that system. So in this case, if you attack a weakness, or if you get a critical, you only use half a turn. So potentially, you could have 6 turns for yourself. But if you attack a shield, or if you miss, then you lose 2 turns on your 1 turn. As opposed, 1 turn will cost 2 press turn hexagons as opposed to 1 or half. And this system works well for both enemies. For you and the enemies. So when that happens, you have to figure out, okay, how do I approach this combat in a tactical sense? Because unlike Final Fantasies, some of the mid-range Final Fantasies, you cannot ignore status effects in this game. You will absolutely be mollywopped by status effects in this game. Stone, if you get hit, when you get turned to stone and get hit by a physical attack, you shatter. Poison does a lot of damage. Curse is like poison, except it reflects damage. Then, of course, as you eat people to gain power, you can get stomach aches. The purpose of this game is to eventually learn how to mitigate everything through skills. So as you become more and more powerful, you pick up mantras, the skills. So, you have your basic fire magic, your basic ice magic, your basic electricity magic, earth magic, force magic, like wind, and then you can iterate on other things. And eventually, you gain the ability to gain, so for example, there's Agi, which is fire, Agi Lao, which is medium fire, Agi Dine, which is 3rd level fire spell. And then, of course, they have the Ma variants, which are, Miragi, Miragi Gon, and Miragi Dine, and those are group-based as opposed to single. And so as you learn all of these mantras, you get better spells. The cool part is eventually everybody with enough grinding can learn everything. And with proper planning, you can make a boss fight that was hard as nails just trivial to the point where it doesn't matter. Last night, for example, I fought one of the harder bosses in the game, the fly form of Beelzebub. He's a secret boss in the game, and he'll absolutely every turn just be like, okay, Mudoon, and just try to kill a player. Well, all of my characters were protected from instant death attacks. So every time he decided to attack my players with a instant death attack, he used up 2 turns, which means that he didn't spend turns removing debuffs or buffing himself. He just like walked into my trap. So the purpose of this game, you want to outplay the AI. And even if you're super, super strong, like, you know, level 99, whatever, if you're in a moderately challenging area, you cannot go on autopilot, because you're going to run into a party that if you make a mistake, I hit a shield, there goes my press turns. Now the enemy's going to be like, okay, cool, Ragnarok, Gates of Hell. I got unlucky, somebody's stoned. Now they do a physical attack, and boom, it's shattered. And in one turn, because they hit your weaknesses, your party's wiped out. So it's a little tougher if you don't play smart. But
you
yeah,
can't just brute strength your way through it.
God, no. If you try that, you will be dead in like the normal. By the way, my controller died.
Rend, slaughter, devour your enemies. There is no other way to survive. You cannot escape your hunger. Warriors of Purgatory.
I don't wanna try to fight this love. How dangerous can it be? No, the odds are so unfavorable, and honesty's forsakable. So many run for safety, run from the danger, falling in love like this. Danger, falling apart in the hands of another. Danger, falling in love like this. Hopes were great in the dark, so completely, so sweetly. Danger.
We'll say at a certain point, you can brute force it, but that's after you've done a lot of grinding and unlocked certain skills. For example, I mentioned the monotheist
The
skill.
press turn system is, in my opinion, like one of the best ideas ever, because if you do actually strategize, you can destroy the enemy. Like, you can wreck them, because you get like double, instead of 4 turns, you get 8 turns. So you can just, and you do more damage. So it's basically like stacking benefits on top. Benefits give you more benefits, but if you suck or if you don't have the right defenses, the enemy can also do the same thing to you and just wipe out your party in like 2 turns.
There is also a wonderful little thing that happens as on the numbers as indicated on when you fight an enemy. If you hit a weakness or you hit a shield, it'll tell you. It'll straight tell you, and it'll give you the number. It'll say like weakness, 396, whatever. Like that's how much damage you did. When the numbers turn red, that means that enemy is less than 20% health. So you don't have to take out like an analyze item to see, well, how much health does this enemy have? It's like, okay, I know now they're at least at 20% at absolute highest, and that can really help out with certain things. The other
That sounds a lot.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That sounds a lot like Octopath. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things that it sounds like Octopath may have, taken from
actually,
this.
That's a very good comparison. And Bravely Default, if you know what that is. It's the game that inspired Octopath Traveler, where like you essentially have more turns, but the turns are given to you based on how well you do, like how well you exploit the weaknesses.
Right.
Which,
instead of just like something you have to stack up.
So for a purpose of references, when I'm talking about all these skills, right? If Words goes back to his status screen, my characters are roughly 78 as opposed to 8. So that's that. So when they have a lot of skills and a lot of stuff. It's one of those things that Surf, because I've farmed a lot of mantra and things, is an absolute monster with the stats. And one of the cool things about the Shin Megami Tensei series is there's often a lot of secret bosses, and Digital Devil Saga is no different. There's King Frost, Beelzebub Human, Beelzebub Fly Form, the 4 Sacred Beasts, then their boss, then Metatron, then Hugh Long, which is another boss, and finally, if you're on the second playthrough or higher, you can unlock the Hitoshura, which is the protagonist from Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. And he, as an RPG boss, is one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought.
I think I've seen like a number of lists that discuss like the hardest RPG bosses, and he's often considered to be like the worst. Like
he's like
the
most, sorry.
The most bullshit boss ever made.
The reason he is because he breaks the game's rules. So if Hitoshura, not only does he come with a party of demons from his previous game, some of the iconic ones, but he also has this ability called Gaia's Rage, which is almighty damage, so it can't be blocked by anything. And when it hits you, it deals 19,000 damage to each character. Now, the maximum amount of health you can have in this game is 999. So he breaks the system, and you have to operate within that broken system. And it's a real massive thing. And if you don't have max stats, his standard physical attack will just one-shot somebody. It doesn't matter. He is an absolute bastard to fight. But if you beat him, you get something in the second game if you import your save called the Amala Ring, which gives the character that wears it like +10 to every stat. And
so we're already down to like a minute left in the discussion, but I'm going to give you an extra 1 or 2 minutes just for you to tell us what do you think it is about this game specifically that, like, because the Shin Megami Tensei series is pretty big. We've got the spin-offs Persona, we've got the Devil Summoner series, we've got the main Shin Megami Tensei games. Why did you gravitate towards this one?
So
thanks for reminding me. Go on.
Okay. So I came across this game, Digital Devil Saga, when I was actually at camp. I was at 29 Palms, right? That's when I found the first game. And that's weird because that was a Marine Corps installation, and this was sitting in the PX, and I needed something for my PS2, and I was like, oh yeah, I played Persona years ago on an emulator or whatever. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever, we'll do this. I'll play this, and I pick it up, and it just absolutely was a fantastic story, and it stuck with me. And I was like, oh my god, I remember how good these things were, and it was the fact that I liked the tactic gameplay, and I loved the story and its absurdity, that it was so complex, and I'm a huge fan of all of that. And I like the idea of, you build up the karma, and then you fight God, and then God's like, well, is this meaningless? And the answer is, well, no, it's not meaningless. I gave it meaning, and all the existential struggles, and the fact that these players were learning about various things, it's amazing, because you talk to a guy who's considered an honorable combatant named Lupa, and Lupa says, give a message to my son, and they're like, okay, yeah, sure, and then they come to the realization, wait, there's no children in the junkyard. Why are there no children? And it's these little hints that kept being dropped. The story was great. Also, Atlas mid-2000s could not miss. They literally on target 100% of the time. And
Persona 3, Persona 4, Shin Megami Tensei 3, Devil Summoner, Raido, something, I can never pronounce that name.
And the Demon or the Soulless Army.
I've got that in the back.
Got that in the back.
We have a Shin Megami Tensei fan in the chat here. Vinicius Augusto. That makes more sense. Tell us why you love Shin Megami Tensei. While I try and find a save point.
I think you're gonna have to go back.
God damn it. Let me find a place to save. Closing thoughts. Like,
You are close to it.
this sounds like a lot, especially for someone who hasn't been a fan of the series. But the game does a very good job of like pacing it out and explaining it over time. What makes this one different from the other ones is that there's no demon compendium. The other ones are basically Pokemon. Like, they're literally Pokemon. You collect demons, and then you can get those demons to mate with other demons to make even better demons. Kind of like Pokemon breeding. But it did it first. The entire design template for Pokemon, and I will fight this point to the grave, comes from the Shin Megami Tensei series.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to understand that this, I think the fact too that this was a darker thing in fantasy, which was really good because like, for example, Final Fantasy VI is kind of dark, but it's not as dark as devouring your enemies. Final Fantasy VII has some dark moments, but not as dark as, you know, the purgatory that you exist here. And that's kind of one of the cool things. And like, Nocturne is really what did it for me. Again, it starts with, you know, a religious murder, genocide, and the end of the world, and then you start playing, and I'm like, okay, that's a hell of an intro to get to somebody. Also, I love the cyberpunk aesthetic too. You know,
absolutely.
The faux cyberpunk is great. It's great. I was a little emo kid back then, so I was a little emo goth kid. So that's one of those things.
I wonder how much this series is going for on eBay right now.
I could probably look it up.
Or nowadays, is this one of the ones you can afford, or is it the one where you're going to have to sell your children in order to?
Let's look at Digital
Devil Saga.
PS2. I see some. Let's see, pre-owned, Atlas only. Wow, I see some from $40 to $170. They're sealed. I see some at $30, $21. A box set with some other stuff for $65.
So I mean, it's actually affordable.
Yeah, it's actually affordable, and I think that's I'm never one to support price gouging and secondary markets because, well, I generally hate them. But I think that's a reasonable price to pay for a PS2 game if you wanted to get your hands on one. I happen to have my copy of the game Words was playing, Digital Devil Saga, right here.
Hey, let's show this baby off. Let's just give this this time in the spotlight it deserves, Nim. Get it up there nice and close to the...
It's a great thing.
Yeah. Hey there, folks. Thanks for making your way through the video. I apologize for the audio issues that I had with this recording. I'm working on getting it fixed. It should sound better even in this recording. This is going to be a regular series going forward where we sit down on Twitch and talk RPG news. I call it side quests, and look back at some old games, as you saw here with Nim and Digital Devil Saga. So if you like this, please consider dropping a few pennies over on Patreon, TNEQL, or even just joining us on Twitch itself and being a part of the discussion. Take care of yourselves and stay beautiful.